Okay, so normally when everything gets more expensive, you expect to see people stop spending money on things like concerts and events. You know, save money for their necessities. That is not happening right now. Today on the podcast, why we are dedicating more and more of our money to fun, even when we can't quite afford it. I'm Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This is Commotion. Okay, first of all, we got to acknowledge something, which is that rent has never been more expensive. The average Canadian rent just hit a record high every month for the last 6 months. The cost of food is way up. You see this. Plenty of experts will tell you we're on the verge of a recession. But then there is this other thing that is happening. People are spending more relative to their income on concert tickets than they ever have before. I know, it doesn't track, but new data from the Bank of America shows it's most definitely a thing that now has a name, and that name is Funflation, which is an incredible name. I'm very happy for the people who name things. We have living proof of Funflation right here in the form of our digital producer, Amelia Eqbal. What's up, Amelia?
Not much. How about you?
I'm happy that you're here. And Mark Harrison has been crunching the numbers. Hi, Mark.
Good morning.
How's it going, y'all? Welcome to the show. Are you ready to do this?
I'm trying to learn how to spell Funflation right now. Forget the numbers. It's all those letters that are tripping me up.
Amelia, I'm going to put you on the spot for a moment.
Please.
Because when we were talking about this phenomenon in the pitch meeting, we're having a conversation about what we're going to talk about. You came out and you were like, look, I am the poster girl for Funflation. Why?
Yeah, I realized very quickly I'm not quite like other girls in the sense that I have made a lot of financially interesting decisions this year and spent quite a bit on concert tickets, more than I have in any other year and more than I think anyone else I know.
Tell me about the number of concerts. How many concerts have you been to this year?
11
concerts.
Double digits. We're at 10. It will be
11 months. You know what I mean? Anyway, continue.
It will be 11 this weekend when I go to see 1975.
Yeah.
But yes, we are in double digit territory, which is new for me. I want to be clear. This is not a regular pattern.
It's Funflation. That's what we're talking about.
We got to rename you. Like, you need to be named Exhibit A or something.
Probably.
Yeah. Patient Zero.
Patient Zero.
Like, let's call security right
Definitely.
now. You need a new badge.
Hey, can you
Round them up.
Tell me about some of the concerts?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I feel like this year I've noticed a really interesting energy at concerts more than I have in other ones that I've been to. In I would say pre-pandemic is what I'm comparing to mostly. It's been kind of holy. Like when I went to Hozier, there was a moment where he was singing Cherry Wine and the whole crowd was just quietly singing to themselves, but everyone was doing it. And so it was like this like beautiful, quiet choir. And he stopped singing and just playing the guitar. And you could hear everyone singing in tune. It was amazing.
That's lovely.
It was amazing. And even at like Sabrina Carpenter, they played All Too Well 10-minute version from Taylor Swift before she came on. And the whole crowd started singing. And I was like, Eras Tour dupe? Yeah. So yeah, it's just been like a really cool vibe in the crowds this year.
I love that you just kind of like, you're the Lady Gaga clip, right? Like you're
100%.
Us, club,
another club,
another club.
No sleep.
Exactly.
No
I get
money, no sleep.
Mark, how is Amelia's experience reflected in the numbers?
Well, what she talked about is actually one of the technical reasons why the spending is so high, because these experiences are disruption proof. It's not like when you're at home watching TV or streaming, you've got 4 screens going, you're at a game and the annoying person in front of you is talking all game. And like concerts are disruption proof. The numbers prove it. Since 2019, the average concert price is up 35%.
35%.
And 20% from last year, because last year people said, oh, it's sky high, it'll never get higher, it's a blip. It's no blip. Yeah. Funflation is here to stay.
Briefly, let's talk about how there's this idea of like how much people are spending as a proportion of their income and how much more concerts now cost. What have you seen in terms of the proportion of income?
So people are making choices, primarily people like Exhibit A. Can I call you Exhibit A?
Oh, please.
Okay, here we go. And so they are actually...
I love that you said people are making choices and then you turn directly to Amelia. That was my favorite
Amelia
thing.
is the person. It's great to have you here because young people, Gen Zs and millennials, are making a choice that says we are going to enjoy life. We are upset with where the world's going. People my age we're burning this planet down. We've got corporate greed. We've got politicians that can't agree. And young folks are like, you know what? This is my escape. And the numbers are really interesting because Best Buy 2 weeks ago came out and said they are losing $1 billion a quarter due to funflation, meaning people aren't buying TVs or blenders. Retail stores are not selling furniture for apartments. The choice is made for experiences over things.
Amelia, these sound like sacrifices to me. What sacrifices do you think you're making in order to go to these concerts?
Well, first of all, I feel like I need to give the caveat as I'm very privileged, and there's a lot of other factors at play of why I have so much disposable income. But the things I'm not spending money on are me personally as who I am as an individual. I don't go to the salon. I don't get my nails done. I haven't been traveling as much this year as well, which is something I do normally try to do. But I feel like that's one thing where I've directly been taking the money I would spend on travel and putting it into concerts this year.
Living at home, right?
Living at home as well. My parents are wonderful people and support me. And so I have a lot more at hand because I'm not paying for rent. I'm not paying for groceries. And so, it's just about choices that you make. Like some people really love to get their nails done. And I love when my friends do that. It's beautiful. It's just not something that I like to do for myself. But going to concerts is something I like to do for myself. So just priorities.
And the big question is why? Why the other sacrifices in favor of the concerts?
I knew you were going to ask me this. I think the answer for myself is that I get a lot of joy out of seeing someone do something that they are born to do. And I feel like the energy at these concerts this year, like you see these artists are coming on stage and they haven't been able to go on stage for 3 years now. And they're just giving it their all. And there's something so beautiful about being in the room with someone who makes art that you love and just seeing them shine. But also, like, I've made friends at concerts this year from being on the lawn. Like, it's just the community aspect is really beautiful. And you can't replicate it. I don't get that from a movie. I don't get that even when I go to a sports game.
Mark, it's really nice for me to be sitting at this chair and not have to direct these questions to myself. But if I was honest, like, I've made some preposterous concert choices this year as well. I flew to Chicago to see Taylor Swift.
Why was that preposterous? You got Chicago, you got Taylor Swift.
I went to Seattle to see Joni Mitchell. And like, if my financial advisor was here, they'd be like, and were these prudent choices?
Is your financial advisor listening?
Hopefully
Exhibit
not,
B,
actually. Exhibit B, I'm right
B,
here.
okay.
But what's your take on the macro level in terms of why this is happening?
Well, I'm a little crushed right now that Amelia hasn't commented on my mani-pedi that I got done on Tuesday. So you know what my choices are. Although I am seeing Shaggy tonight, but somebody's taking me.
Oh, love this video. Yes.
But let's think. I'm going to throw a stat at you that's going to blow your mind. Taylor Swift and Beyonce contributed $5.3 billion to the U.S. economy this year.
Put that in proportion for
Two
me. Like, what does
people.
that equal to? That sounds like it's many industries.
That's like a country. I mean, I don't mean to get political, but lock Biden and Trump up in a closet and let Beyonce and Taylor Swift fix the world's economic problems.
Say it louder.
$5.3 billion. Yeah, lock the two old guys up in a closet. And let's get T Swift and Beyonce. We'll just have like a party, and instead of being it'll be a real party.
Yeah, a real party.
And so those are the macro influences we're seeing, and so. Yes, food is up, inflation's up, costs are up. In the United States, people with student loans are actually deferring student loans to buy concert tickets.
Sure.
And you talked about, Amelia, that opportunity to see somebody who's putting their all, their soul, their heart, every visceral energy to entertain. And I think that's one of the powers of music, even when you think about movies and the whole Barbie effect. I'm a massive sports fan, but you know one thing that's interesting about sports? 50% of the people who attend leave pissed off because somebody won and somebody lost, right? 50% of the people leave pissed off.
You're rolling the dice.
Right? There's fights in the parking lot. There's arguments among brothers, you name it. You go to an amazing concert, to an amazing movie, to a book launch even, 99% of the people leave changed, not just for that night. And to your point on meeting friends, maybe they're inspired, maybe it gave them a bridge.
Yeah.
We've got a mental health tsunami upon us. And I think especially for young people, so this gives that moment.
Yeah.
And it's not just the actual being at the concert. I mean, I'd love to know your pre-event rituals, your pre-travel rituals.
Sure.
Millennials and Gen Zs, they're buying the outfit. What era am I going to wear to the Taylor Swift?
Yeah.
What's the pink I'm going to put on for the Barbie? So the economics are unbelievable, but let's go back to it. $5.3 billion. But
I mean, I hear that though, and then I go, we all kind of know that a recession is looming. There's an idea that like, okay, if a recession is on the horizon, you do the thing that you got to do, which is like you prepare for the coming collapse. You batten down the hatches. That is not happening when it comes to concerts and spending. Does that surprise you at all?
So at the risk of offending everybody who works here, there is no recession coming. The media has been talking about a recession.
Yeah.
We are not in a recession. We have high inflation.
That's true. Yeah.
And we have solid employment numbers. Now, we could go to one, and quite frankly, most people think we need to just to tamper.
Sure.
Really, the telling statistic to look at will be personal savings. People accumulated a lot of personal savings during the pandemic because you couldn't travel, you didn't buy new outfits, you weren't eating out, you weren't doing all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. And so the question I have is when those personal savings start to dwindle, then you might see this impact. But right now, there is no signs. All the data points to this incredible demand. And the neat knock-on effect we're going to start seeing is that the headline talent's doing really well. The lower and mid-level talent, live music is on fire everywhere.
There was all this talk about the idea that, like, you know, live music is going to suffer after the pandemic. Live events are going to suffer after the pandemic. That there would be sort of this idea of like, oh, I don't know if I want to like go out of the house. And people are like, not only do I want to do that, I want to spend all the money that I have on this experience.
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
I spent my entire career, I own an event marketing company, trying to convince brands that human connection was more important from a marketing standpoint than being served an ad online.
Yeah.
And the pandemic, as horrible as it was,
took a pandemic to convince people.
Yeah, it came along. I couldn't convince people. Clearly, I'm not very articulate, but the pandemic was.
That's a startling thing to sit with. So I'm going to sit with that for a moment.
Sit with it.
Amelia, I'm going to ask you a big question. I hope that you're ready for this one. I see you physically bracing for it. If we play this tape back to you in 10 years, do you think there's any part of you that's going to go, oof, I made choices. Boy, do I regret all those choices.
What a great question.
I won't.
Wow.
And I know that.
What a definitive answer.
I feel secure where I am now. And again, because I don't have a car to pay for. I don't have a mortgage. I don't go to the gym. I don't have a membership. I'm wasting. So this is just what I do for myself. This is what I do for fun. The memories I've made with my friends this year and my family going to these concerts are ones that I know I will be holding on to. I still think about going to Ed Sheeran with my family earlier this year. I still am so glad I got to go to Boy Genius with you and with my other friends. And so those are things that last longer than I don't know, anything else I would be spending that money on. And I've been saving as well. I think if I didn't have a secure financial situation, obviously the number would not be in the double digits.
Yeah, it might be 8.
But you know what? Pandemic, I was in my early 20s when it started. I came out a 24, 25-year-old. And so I guess I'm kind of making up for lost time here. And I don't regret that decision.
I was going to say, like, what I liked about that is how quickly you're like, no, absolutely not going to regret any part of this.
Like in 10 years, nobody's going to say, remember that drive we had in your Nissan Rogue?
Right?
On this note, I'm going to leave it here. But Mark, Amelia, thank you both of you for coming in. This is the best.
Thank you.
It's fun.
Of course. Amelia Eqbal is our digital producer here at Commotion. She's going to see the 1975. I'm very jealous that she's going to another concert. But who knows? By the end of the year, maybe she'll be at 45. There's still time, Amelia. Mark Harrison is the founder of the MH3 Collective and the Black Talent Initiative. My name is Elamin Abdelmahmoud, and this is Commotion. Listen, I am just the right age to carry around a bunch of nostalgia about BlackBerry, because in high school and in university, BlackBerries were everywhere. And it was kind of the status symbol that I felt shut out of because I had a little like Sony Ericsson. It's fine. I'm not mad about it. Obama had a BlackBerry. Beyonce had a BlackBerry. The Kardashians used a BlackBerry. And then it had this extra special dimension because the news would always talk about, hey, BlackBerry, that's a Canadian company. And then suddenly, the BlackBerry disappeared. There's a new series that just came out on CBC Gem. It's called BlackBerry. Maybe you saw the movie that came out a little while ago. Well, this is an extended 3-part series with never-before-seen footage. They took the movie, they made it longer, and now it's a TV series. It's directed by Matt Johnson. I spoke with Matt when the film premiered at the Berlin International Film Festival, and he started out by telling me what it is about the BlackBerry story that made him want to turn it into a film.
I love the people. I love Mike Lazaridis and Jim Balsley. I loved. Nobody knew much about them. And when I was reading this book, I thought, oh, this is really fertile ground for me to do something personal without having a whole ton of baggage associated with it. And it's an odd company because most mega tech corporations like Tesla or Apple or Microsoft have a kind of, maybe you call it a despotic ruler, or other people would call it like a real Superman at the head of it. But this company had two. It was a bit of a man divided into two different people. And that was really compelling because it meant that there wasn't just one personality that was dictating the culture. It was two. And so my co-writer, Matt Miller, and I got to play a lot of games with that.
Now, this idea of Superman at the top of the company, we
happened to be just like in this moment of reckoning with tech gods, right? Like there was like a show about WeWork, there was a show about the guy who made Uber. We keep returning and critiquing this idea of the tech titan as a god. Why do you think we're in this moment where we may be revisiting that mythology?
Well, I think there's a real criticism right now of this solve anything superhero Ayn Randian capitalist.
Yeah.
And I think that it's very culturally appetizing to society at this moment to think that these male technologists are not all they cracked up to be. And so I think that may have something to do with it. It's kind of an anti-capitalist pablum that's being used to keep people under control. But I don't know. I haven't watched those. I tried to watch the beginning of, I think it was the Uber show, and I was like, this is just horrible. Same with Theranos, that Theranos show. My opinion is a lot of this work is not being treated that seriously. And so it's funny because this wave of tech movies and TV shows all seems to have come out at the same time.
Yeah.
And I'm actually happy in a way that our film is being released into the same slosh because hopefully it stands out in that we're kind of telling a different story. We're not so interested in lampooning capitalism as much as we are trying to explore the personalities that wind up doing bizarre things.
So I guess something that I've always been curious about is how it changes you to make something that becomes so popular, right? Like the idea of the BlackBerry lands and it becomes the smartphone of choice for people in business. But then it also becomes a smartphone of choice for celebrities long before Apple even got there. I mean, there was a period of time where they called it the Crackberry, right? Like
right.
All the early coverage of Barack Obama talks about how he's always either smoking a cigarette or holding his BlackBerry and is doing basically nothing else. And I guess like my curiosity is like, how do you think that changes you if you are the company behind that and you've made something so resonant?
Well, BlackBerry is unique in that they're a Canadian company. And I think the humility of Mike and Jim, although I'm sure some people would laugh to hear that, but their kind of Canadian humility stopped them from really taking that too seriously, which I think was a blessing and a curse, because I don't think either of those guys were necessarily cool. I don't think that they were very tapped into culture. And right. I think that they were ecstatic that all of these celebrities were using their product. But unlike a lot of sort of CEO figureheads, I don't think that they'd be hanging out with the people who use their products. Right. And whereas I think that, Steve Jobs probably would have been welcome in those circles. Right. And I'm not so sure it would have been the same for those two Canadians.
So you have this story, these humble Canadians who made this thing that had a meteoric rise. And then suddenly it just kind of disappeared. What do you think went wrong?
Well, the film gets into that in a lot of ways. I mean, the movie ends in 2008, right before the big collapse of both their stock and their popularity. And I think a lot of things went wrong, a lot of things that maybe people don't know about. The biggest piece that the film makes the point about is that they really didn't have their eyes set on data sales in a way that iPhone, Apple, and specifically AT&T really did. I think we forget that in the late 90s, early 2000s, really telecoms were selling us minutes and text messages.
Oh, I remember, buddy. I remember it well. Yeah. Yeah.
It was very a la carte. And so it was the number of minutes you'd be talking on your phone that you were being charged for.
Yeah.
And Apple really obliterated that business model and moved to a fully data sales model. And BlackBerry, they had based their entire philosophy on having the lowest data footprint that they could.
Right.
And so really that collision did not sit well with their bottom line. Also, there's all kinds of other crazy. I mean, the SEC was doing an investigation on stock option backdating. They were being sued for all this patent fraud. Like there was major problems that were occurring. But really, I think it boils down to not being able to see the future.
There's something about the words that you said when we all had minutes that just transported me right back to 2005, because all I would do constantly is just text friends, be like, I can't call you, I'm out of minutes. And I
don't got the minutes.
I don't have the minutes.
I loved that when I would hear on the streets, I'd be walking down the street and oftentimes I would hear people say, "Oh, I can't call him. He's not worth the minutes." I'm not picking this up. He's not worth the minutes. He's not worth the minutes.
Listen, if I only had 300 minutes a month, I'm not going to use it on someone that I don't want to talk to, right? That's the whole philosophy. So you made this film about BlackBerry. What was the most surprising thing for you in diving into the BlackBerry story?
You mean from the point of view of a filmmaker, or in the actual story of BlackBerry?
I think if you're maybe someone who's unfamiliar with the story of BlackBerry and then it comes to you to sort of dig into it, what did you find that was like, oh, I didn't know anything about this?
Well, I think that at one point in time, they controlled 50% of the cell phone market.
Oh,
so
wow.
There was a shining moment when a Canadian company had a larger control of the cell phone market than Apple does now.
Right.
So the world has changed a great deal. Now the smartphone is a totally ubiquitous consumer product.
Yeah.
But in the mid to late 2000s, they were posed to take over the entire world. They were a company that was so big and successful that no one could touch them in telecoms. At its height, BlackBerry controlled almost 50% of the cell phone market, and today it's zero.
I remember Lil Wayne rapping about how he can run his entire company from his BlackBerry, and that was something that you just couldn't do at the time. So just being introduced to this idea of there are people who need to run broad swaths of business, and they can do it all from this one single device. And I think that's the period you're talking about, right? This period of 2003 to 2008-ish or so.
Actually, yeah, the real boom was when they hit the international market, 2009 to 2011.
Oh, wow. So
or
even
so.
later than
because
I thought. Yeah.
The thing is, the BlackBerry became old news in North America around 2009, 2010, but they had penetrated all of Europe, Asia. They were huge. Even as recently as a year ago, BlackBerry was still being used in some countries. So they had massive international penetration.
Matt, I got about 30 seconds left. There are still people out there who refuse to give up on their BlackBerry this many years later. What do you think it is for them that they keep holding on to?
They love the click. I know this for a fact. They love the keyboard. And unfortunately, it's not coming back. But I wish them luck, and I understand the feeling because I spent about 2 years of my life talking to BlackBerry engineers who feel the exact same way.
Matt Johnson, thank you so much for taking the time to chat today.
You too. You are Mr. Charming. I could talk to you forever.
Let's do it. Let's just keep hanging out off air for the rest of the day. Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Talk soon. It's Matt Johnson, directed BlackBerry, an extended 3-part series with never-before-seen footage just came out on CBC Gem. Listen, when I was a kid, I read on the internet that the writer Salman Rushdie was living in fear because of the threats on his life, because he wrote a book. So what did I do? I went to the public library and I got that book, The Satanic Verses. And you know what? To my surprise, the librarian checked it out. She didn't stop me. Nothing bad happened. The world didn't end. Here's the thing. I remember hiding it under a big sweater. I didn't want anyone to see it. I was afraid I might get caught with it. I'm happy to tell you, I survived. It went fine. And it actually was a useful lesson to not be afraid of a book again. I'm bringing this up because book bans are getting worse. In Canada and in the US, book challenges and book bans are increasing. And the books that get banned quite often are a way to open a conversation with young people about race or sexuality or gender. I'm not just saying all of this because I'm married to someone who works in the library sector. I think it's important to defend books because books are an easy target. When an idea is challenging to people, they ban books about it. Just last week in Ontario, a Catholic school board made it harder for students to access 4 books that talk about queer issues to young readers. And then in America, PEN America tracks books that are banned in the US, and they found that the rate of book banning is going up. They actually found that book bans are increasingly being led by elected officials. These are organized efforts. It's not random. It is quite deliberate. Earlier this week, the Gillard Prize was handed out. That's the biggest book prize in Canada. And at that event, Ian Williams spoke, and I want you to hear what he said.
It's natural to feel distressed by the dystopia that we're living in. George Orwell, Ray Bradbury, Aldous Huxley, and our own Margaret Atwood saw it coming, and they warned us. We see state censorship, book bans, book burnings even, and we feel fear rising in us, policing our words. We scratch our heads at the level of intolerance to certain stories. Why are certain factions so afraid of our stories? What are we supposed to do? In short, if you're a writer, you keep writing. If you're a reader, you keep reading. To be ridiculously optimistic, I would say that every time a book is banned, censors are testifying to its power and their fear of what a book can do to change minds and to change lives, especially those of children. More than ever, it's important for writers to persist in writing uncomfortable literature. We leave our reality to inhabit someone else's. Their suffering becomes ours. Their hopes and ambitions and disappointments all stay with us for days, sometimes for our whole lives. Readers, please keep reading. And writers, keep writing. Because someday, this could happen to you.
That is the author Ian Williams of this week's Giller Prize event. If you're looking for a way through all of this, I got a suggestion that might work for you. The artist Pink is playing Florida this week, and at her concerts, she's handing out 2,000 copies of books that have been banned. She's doing it there because Florida has more books banned than any other state. There are like 9 school districts where you can't read Beloved by Toni Morrison. That is a Pulitzer Prize winning book, and you can't read it. Pink's approach to my mind is a good start. If you hear about a book being banned or challenged, my suggestion, you should make it your point and your business to gift that book to someone. And that is it for the podcast today. Listen, remember, you can listen to any episode of Commotion anytime you like, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you have a few minutes today, I would love it if you would go to our Instagram and follow us. Our Instagram is @CommotionCBC. My name is Elamin Abdelmahmoud. We're going to be back tomorrow. We're going to talk about this cringe comedy series, The Curse, which truly, the pilot of, made me cringe so hard I fell asleep. I just could not handle it. Emotionally, I shut down. That's how cringy it was. And also, we're going to talk about the final season of The Crown. There's a lot to talk about. We're going to be here tomorrow. If you're going to be here tomorrow, let's do it again.